you know is that when Donald Trump gets in trouble, he does everything he can to distract everyone from the thing that's getting him in trouble. He believes not only that he's at the center of the storm, but he is the storm. He will
Right.
create the weather pattern that he needs to have to distract everybody from what's happening. What we are seeing now is the art of distraction is not working.
Jamal, good to be back with you. Our weekly Trailblaze therapy session. How are you doing?
Good, Nira. It's good to see you. Good to talk to you. I'm glad everybody is joining us back here on Trailblaze. We got a lot going on right now in the country. It's supposed to be a sleepy summertime, and yet this politics stuff just won't stop.
Yeah, I just they're not leaving us alone. And I mean like literally they're not leaving us alone because it's if it's not something affecting our citizenship or our identity or our schooling. I mean there's something that's being tinkered with every day that will impact our pocketbook, our families. I'm like, oh, I wish I could just have a government where I could trust it to take care of me and not have to really think about it every single day. It'd be nice to get back to that.
Absolutely. I went to a meeting yesterday about global press freedom. You would appreciate this because this is like in your wheelhouse of things. And one of the things that came up is about how there are lots of journalists, particularly journalists who are immigrants and journalists even who are Americans, but they cover tough topics, who are afraid to leave the country. They're afraid to get on an airplane because they don't know what will happen when they come back, and if the government will let them in, if they're immigrant or green card holder, or if they are an American citizen with full citizenship, they come back, will they have their devices seized at the border? Have they ever said anything on some social media app that criticizes the government? What will happen to them if they get stopped at the border? And so you think about all over the world, we the United States have been the people who've gone around the world and said, protect press, protect freedom, make sure everybody's going to be okay. And then you have an American government that's not doing that. That's in fact going in the opposite direction.
75% of Americans don't have a passport, right? Don't travel overseas and any of that. So the idea of how we treat people at the border or specifically airport borders isn't something top of mind. And I
Right.
get that, but it is very much for a segment of the population. It is not only bread and butter, but it's also how you came to discover your American identity, right? Like I've always felt affirmed when coming back from visiting family overseas, welcome back home, right? That recognition that I'm an American and that by virtue of being born here, I was trained and raised a certain way, but it was simply by virtue of being born here. But yeah, under some of Stephen Miller's definitions, I wouldn't count, and all my public service and all that just wouldn't count the way who other people count in America. So that border experience is very powerful, and it says a lot about how our country views people in general, whether it's its own people or other people, and the rest of the world recognizes that. And it's not just about Trump's tariff conversations, like, all right, is he going to stand up for it or not? What's going on? Are any of these real? Most of them are not. I mean, there's so many different ways that the United States has influenced countries overseas, like you said, press freedom, our standing up for values, our intervention in wars. And at this point, countries are just moving on. They're global dynamics and we're in a globalized economy, but the United States is cutting itself out of that.
And so one of the things that came up on that point is, we used to have a Secretary of State and a State Department that brought up difficult issues when it sat down across the table from people who were dictators or authoritarians or in some ways, undesirable leaders in different places. One of those questions was about press freedom, right? What happens to journalists in your country if journalists are being assaulted or journalists are being killed? Do we say something? And that is probably not happening right now in the U.S. State Department. They're not raising those questions. And when you attack USAID, you don't just attack this American institution. You say it's a criminal enterprise. Everybody who's gotten money from USAID all over the world is now subject to investigation in their own countries because they have been funded by a criminal enterprise. And so what were they doing with these criminals over at USAID? So it's just made the whole world less safe, less trusting of America. And, the question about our power over the rest of the century, will you and I and our children be able to have a world where being an American is seen as something people admire or seen as something people are wary of?
Well, here's a direct translation of this. I remember when I was at the United Nations and I traveled with the UN ambassador of the United States to Nigeria. And the president of Nigeria had recently declared some pretty strict controls on behavior for his citizens, and some of it was targeted at gay citizens, right? What you
Mm,
could or could not do in public. And I remember the UN ambassador being very torn about, well, I know this trip is going about these other counterterrorism issues, but this is important. And this is what the United States stands up for. And us speaking up may get him to backpedal on some of these social issues at home. And there's plenty of people who worked on the content are like, no, don't bring it up. This is deeply cultural. It'll be seen as US interference. And how do how dare you tell them what to do in their culture? Just go and have that counterterrorism conversation. And so this is in an era when we were expanding gay rights here in the United States, and there was still that concern about how do you navigate that as the United States. Now, when the United States under the Trump administration has stripped the rights of U.S. diplomats who are gay and married,
mm.
they don't get defended overseas. Their children, by the way, no longer get legal status in the United States. There's the Foreign Service. It used to be that if you got married and you adopted a child, the Foreign Service recognizing the marriage and recognizing the family served as a legal precedent for when you came home to the United States. They're now saying that's fine. You were a U.S. government official overseas and you lived with your family and raised your family for 5 or 6 years. Now you've been called back. Guess what? On top of being called back, we're not going to question the validity you have to raising that child.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
it's so, yeah, there's just certain issues that the United States is now, because of how we're dealing with them domestically and our own people, they're not going to be raised. And they're not, if they are, it's not going to be taken seriously.
And so these are these big issues, right, that are on the table. That's a big issue. We had the Congressional Budget Office report that said that big bill, the big ugly bill, or whatever you want to call it, that Trump passed and the Senate passed and the House, is now going to put $3.4 billion of additional debt on the government. We're not talking about that as something that's not popular. And instead, obviously, we've also got this question of Epstein, and Trump is trying to stay away from having to talk about his relationship with Epstein, letters, love letters, and friend letters that he wrote to this guy, who was one of the most notorious pedophile traffickers in the history of the country. Trump doesn't want to talk about that. And instead, we are witnessing a barrage, just a barrage of the most distasteful personal tweets or X posts or truth social posts or whatever social media posts from him, and government action to try to distract people from talking about the things that are important.
Okay, let's go with distraction number one, which is they didn't release the Epstein files. They're saying there are none. Distraction number one, let's release the MLK assassination files.
You're
Like
right.
just out of nowhere in the middle of the week, like, okay, let's just drop those. Meanwhile, the family's like, there's not much really here in these files. And really they're trying to distract you from the fact that they have other issues. I love Bernice King's tweet response. She's like, okay, now do the Epstein files. Like, no, this isn't even this trove of documents isn't even about uh, the details of the surveillance, right? Like it's a bunch of files that have MLK's name on it, and historians will pour through it. It may be valuable to them, but there's no shocking secret. It's some of it is about how they captured the assassin, the killer,
Yeah.
and things like that. So
Ray. Yeah.
somewhat interesting, but certainly not as interesting as the fact that the files everyone are talking about still have not been released.
Right. So you want to release these files from 50 years ago, 50 plus years ago, about the King assassination, but you won't release the files from the last few years about Epstein that you promised for years, and your people all promised, and even your attorney general just recently, as we heard from Anthony Coley last week, even your attorney general said that she was reviewing the files on her
Videos.
desk.
Yep.
And now they don't really exist. There's nothing to see here. Everybody just move along. And so in addition to the MLK files, we also saw
The distraction number two.
Yeah, distraction number two. Yes, thank you for keeping count. Distraction number two is Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has now said that she wants to investigate the Obama national security team for the 2016 election, right? For the 2016 election and the Russia involvement in 2016, even though we also have Barack Obama, who said in person when he was president of the United States that he didn't see that the election was turned by the Russians in any sort of formal way in terms of votes. But that still doesn't stop them from saying, let's go ahead and have another investigation of it. And
But
all
Trump
these
won
people,
that election.
and Trump won that
Like
election,
Trump,
and
why
we
are you
had
investigating
impeachments and congressional investigations. And, this has all been poured over 1,000 times. And a Justice Department investigation, this has all been poured over a bunch of times. But you know what? Let's just bring out the old hits. Somebody play hit number 7. The people who are
Russia
missing hit number
investigation?
7.
Let's bring that back. Russia
Right.
investigation. I'm like, oh wait, Russia's the bad guy again now? Is that what you're trying to tell us? We don't
Yes.
like
And then
them
people
anymore?
are,
Are we back to where we used to be? No. Um, wow. Yeah, the Tulsi Gabbard one is it. I again, some of the that is head scratching logic, but that the original Russia investigation was 17 intelligence agencies agreed on the assessments in that report, and
and yeah.
yeah, and what they agreed on was that Russia was trying to influence the election through social media campaigns and heightening existing political tensions, all of that. But no, it did not hack machines or anything along that line, but did what they usually do with their adversaries is try to use their knowledge for political influence. And again, Trump won. So that's like, you think you'd want to just leave that one be. Um,
I was one of the few people. I was one of the few people who actually read the report because it was fascinating. It was fascinating. But one of the things that the Justice Department report that was completely misrepresented by the former Attorney General Bill Barr. One of the things in that report basically said Russia tried to manipulate the election. They tried to exert influence over voters. Trump knew they exerted influence over voters. Trump was wanting to meet and talk to them about the influence they were exerting over voters. Trump tried to capitalize on the influence campaign they were running in the United States over voters. Now, what we did not ever prove was that Trump and any of his associates had a direct conversation that said, if you do this, we'll do that, where they coordinated with them. But it was clear that Trump knew it was happening and they designed a strategy that amplified what was happening, and they took advantage of what the Russians were doing. And
if
I just think
anything,
that's also not a problem. That's still a problem. People, I
if
hate to go
any,
backwards, but
yeah,
whatever.
if anything, the Obama administration was criticized for not having revealed during the election cycle what they knew. And Obama said, yeah, we knew about the Russian engagement and interference, but we didn't want to go public because we didn't want to influence the election and seem like we were trying to favor Hillary by dumping on Trump. And so it was shortly after the election that all of this stuff was released. During that election season, the Obama administration did kick out several Russian agents and they shut down, a field house. They knew that was a Russian field house. So they took some action, but broadly in the intelligence community, national security folks were like, we get your political understanding, but once you realize there were intelligence issues here, you should have acted. So I'm like, is Tulsi Gabbard going to come out and say Obama should have done more earlier about Russia? Like, again, doesn't really fit the Trump administration narrative, but that's what number 2 is. That's the distraction. I'm going to go with number 3,
Give us
distraction,
number 3. Yes, number
is
3,
the
distraction.
lawsuit that Trump has launched against the Wall Street Journal and
Yes.
the Murdoch empire. And the lawsuit is saying that Trump never drew these drawings, that this supposed article in which these supposed journalists said that he had drawn gifts for Jeffrey Epstein. Like, I've never drawn a picture in my life. And all it does is draw attention to that original article. Like, if it is not, if you really, it's like the don't look here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the Streisand effect. You literally are looking here. It's like, oh, what's the article that got him so worked up? They decided to need to file a lawsuit against the owners of Fox News. Like, why would you do that?
I'm laughing uncontrollably if you're not watching this on YouTube. I am laughing uncontrollably over here because, and I'm not trying not to interrupt my co-host here. Um, I'm laughing because whenever Trump says that he didn't draw pictures, I don't even draw pictures. We all saw him on national television in the hurricane drawing like an extra hurricane cone over like a part of the United States to show people that he was not making things up when we knew that he was. So
In my
it's
life,
just so
never
ridiculous.
drawn a picture in my life.
Never
You know
drawn a
what I
picture
mean?
in my life.
You know what I mean? Disgusting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and one of the people who did what you just mentioned, this whole idea of I say it, it is drawing attention to the original problem, is Megyn Kelly did this amazing, I don't know, introduction on her show where she was talking about this issue. I think Megyn Kelly is subtly trying to tank Donald Trump. I think revenge is a dish best served cold, and she knows it. And she went through an entire like 90-second explanation of the case and what he said he did and what his history was Epstein, and how, you know, it was just a 50th birthday card with a salacious picture of a woman, including her, you know, upper body. And he was doing this and like, she like explained the entire thing and then said, but I don't really care about that.
Not a big
As if that was
whatever.
going to absolve the fact that she just told the entire listener and listening audience everything they needed to know about the Trump Epstein connection. I think that Megyn Kelly may be a surprise, like a
Oh,
little
you
agent.
mean a lot of the people who've ridden Trump's coattails on Trumpism are totally willing to turn against him in particular when the time is right?
Well, remember, he came for her, right? Remember during that 2016 election when she was moderating the debate and he came for her, blood coming out of her wherever, I think was the quote. And I just think, you know, she had to, for market purposes, get back on sides with the Trump people. But somewhere inside of Megyn Kelly, she's
Listen,
still got a knife.
if you and I haven't forgotten that, she's definitely not forgotten that. It's
For
not coming.
sure.
Oh yeah.
All right, so here's my distraction number 4.
Okay.
My distraction number 4 is Donald Trump posted a video, and one of the crazy things he posted a video of Barack Obama, as a fake AI generated video of Barack Obama being arrested in the Oval Office while they were at a meeting, thrown to the floor, handcuffed, taken to jail, and sitting in a jail cell in an orange jumpsuit. I mean, he was just releasing these things like, you know, one after the other, just trying to get pickup. And obviously we're picking it up a little bit, but we're only picking it up to say it's not distracting us from the fact that you won't release the Epstein
Yep.
files.
Oh, or from, again, multiple thing wrong with policy right now and how policy is being executed, and experts just being disappeared out of government service, and many of the job functions that were eliminated suddenly realizing they're actually necessary. So then you hire contractors to do those jobs, which costs even more money. I mean, it's all chaos when it comes to the management side of things. But the distractions from it, really the fact the MAGA base, his own people who he decided to call weaklings and attack last week, which that was also interesting.
Yes, he
The
did.
MAGA base is not
I don't want your
following
support.
him out of this. Like he said, move on. I
Right.
am your dear leader. I've said move on. If you're still obsessed with this, you're a weakling and there's something wrong with you. And people haven't moved on. They want to hold him accountable. Of all the things, they want to hold him accountable for this promise.
Yeah, I think this is the place where the crazy wackadoodles on the right, who have come up with all these bad conspiracy theories that we've all talked about, you can't, someone said this yesterday, you can't kill a conspiracy theory. Like, this is the thing, like, it will always morph to some new way of existing, that is not it can't be, the facts are not going to stop it from morphing into the new reality. And so Donald Trump trying to say there's nothing to see here, like it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, is not going to work. People still say, like, let us get at these files, there must be something here. And let me just say this, I think maybe we talked about this last week. The American society is not working for a lot of people. You and I have talked about this before. Loans are too much, you know, housing costs too much, healthcare is bankrupting people, you know, all these things are happening in people's lives, jobs are in jeopardy, you know, families, all these things are happening in people's lives, and they want somebody to blame. And the right has decided they can blame liberals who are in charge of government and people who are, you know, upset about what's happening, legitimate things that are happening in their lives, the price of goods and groceries, are looking at us, and now they thought Donald Trump was going to be the one who was going to bring down prices, help switch the structure of the society so that them and people who look like them could have an advantage again. But you know what? He can't do it. He's not going to do it. But they latched on to this one little thing as an instance that maybe Donald Trump isn't who he said he was. He isn't going to do what he said he did. And if that holds, if that congeals, I think the whole house of cards is in jeopardy. I'm not ready to predict the demise of Trumpism, but I do think he may lose a level of legitimacy that we have not yet seen him be on the precipice of losing.
Well, I think he'd managed to get people willing to tighten their belts just a little bit. in his coalition and he said it frankly, like, yeah, there's gonna be some short-term hurt, but there's gonna be a lot of long-term gain. And yes, we have seen people in tribal situations, they're willing to suffer a little bit if they think the other people are really gonna pay for what they did wrong.
Right.
But this goes, as you said, to the heart of the belief in Donald Trump as a truth teller, or somebody who's going to say it like it is and point it out, all the things wrong with society and the elites. And now suddenly, wait a minute, he's gotten the position of power and he's not being transparent, right? So that goes to the why people trusted him versus the policies and whether or not people agreed with it or not. They're like, okay, I can roll with you on some policy if you just convince me and give me a reason. But this was the trust factor of why people look at Donald Trump in that way. There's a Gallup poll done about 2 years ago that said for Trump supporters, many of them, I mean more than 50%, trust Trump over their own pastor or priest or minister. Right. So this
Wow.
is right. It's that level of faith and belief. If he loses that, and this may not be the only issue, this may not be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but we are seeing that it is possible for people to then get cracks in their faith in Donald Trump. Then that's when you start to see change happening again.
Well, and what we know is that when Donald Trump gets in trouble, he does everything he can to distract everyone from the thing that's getting him in trouble. He believes not only that he's at the center of the storm, but he is the storm. He will
Right.
create the weather pattern that he needs to have to distract everybody from what's happening. What we are seeing now is the art of distraction is not working.
There we have it. All right, Jamal. It's only the beginning of the week. Who knows? We'll probably get up to distraction number 10 by Friday.
Absolutely. All right. Good to talk to you, Nara. See you
Take
next
care,
week.
Jamal.